hope you enjoyed our Oriental breakfast. I'm very happy today to be standing here and having Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is an honor to host you in Global Trade Matters Center of Business Excellence, first conference in our own home, Business with Latin America. There are a series for 2015 with Business with Asia, Energy Summit, Investing in Egypt's Green Economy. This is really the first time in Egypt that a private sector think tank takes initiative and creates a home where thinkers, academics, stakeholders can come together and share experiences. This is what we're trying to do today with Business with Latin America. I would like this opportunity to thank their excellencies from Latin America for participating and supporting us on this very nice event. I would like to thank the private sector, both Egyptian and Latin Americans, and I would like to also extend my thanks to the Egyptian government, Ministry of International Cooperation, GAFI, Ministry of Agriculture, and many others, just to name a few. I hope you enjoy the rest of the day, and today we will be sharing experiences from other parts of the world where we can benefit. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. I would like to give the mic to my CEO and partner, Ashraf Mohammed Naguib.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. As Nancy just said, thank you very, very much for being here today. If you would just allow me, I have some thanks and gratitude to give to His Excellency Ambassador Lars, His Excellency Ambassador Jorge, because without them, without their support, without their incentives for us to be able to put this event together, without their coordination, through a lot of meetings and discussions, there's a lot of energy between Egypt and Latin America that is untapped. And this is, as His Excellency Ambassador Jorge always says regarding this initiative, this is not just a conference, this is the beginning of a very long road that we will continue to push towards trying to enhance trade and investment relations with Egypt. If you would allow me just a word in Arabic to our media. أولا أنا عاوز أشكر معالي الوزير السابق وزارة الخارجية محمد بيه العرابي لوجوده معانا النهارده ودعمه مش بس للعلاقات التجارية والاستثمارية ما بين مصر وأمريكا اللاتينية، ولكن في حاجات كتيرة جدا احنا بنعملها من ضمنها أفريقيا والاتحاد الأوروبي ومؤتمرات اقتصادية بيحضر معانا فيها. وبحب أشكر طبعا وزارة الاستثمار، جافي، وزارة الخارجية ممثلها معانا النهارده، Egyptian Commercial Service برضو موجودين معانا، والEgyptian State Information Service. أنا عاوز أقول إن للصحافة إن في غاية الأهمية إن إحنا ما نتجنبش الاقتصادات الكبيرة والصغيرة اللي موجودة في أمريكا اللاتينية. المكسيك حوالي تريليار و200 مليار دولار، برازيل 2 تريليار دولار GDP. فاحنا ما بنتكلمش على اقتصادات صغيره، احنا بنتكلم على اقتصادات كبيره جدا. واحنا اتعلمنا حاجات يمكن برضو عاوز ان انتوا تلمسوا عليها في الانترفيوز بتاعتكم. في تجاره بتحصل بيننا وبين امريكا اللاتينيه، في شغل كتير بيحصل ولكن مش بالكم ومش بالحجم اللي احنا المفروض نكون عليه. فالنهارده ارجو ان احنا نقدر ناخد الوقت دوت ان احنا نتعرف على سفراء امريكا اللاتينيه اللي كلهم موجودين حضورهم معانا، من مستشارين تجاريين للسفراء نفسهم لممثلين من السفارات. اتكلموا معاهم، نحاول نفهم وجهه نظرهم، نشوف المشاكل اللي احنا بنواجهها في التجاره والاستثمار بيننا وبين بعض، ودايما نبعد عن فكره ازاي نجذب الاستثمارات من امريكا اللاتينيه. تعالوا نفكر على الفرص اللي موجوده لاستثمارات مصريه وصادرات مصريه لامريكا اللاتينيه. without further ado, أحب أقدم لكم His Excellency Ambassador Lars Pira, who is the Ambassador of Guatemala and currently the Dean of the Latin American Ambassadors Group. Your Excellency.
Your Excellencies, Ambassadors and Heads of Missions of Latin America and the Caribbean, Mr. Ashraf Naguib, Chief Executive Officer, Global Trade Matters, members of the private sector here who have attended this meeting, ladies and gentlemen. In the name of all the Latin American and the Caribbean ambassadors and heads of missions assembled here today, I would like to extend my congratulations and appreciation to Global Trade Matters, especially to Mr. Ashraf Naguib, for having staged this seminar entitled Doing Business with Latin America, Enhancing Trade and Investments Relations between Egypt and Latin America. This gives us a unique opportunity to be able to strengthen trade and investment relations between Egypt and our respective countries. Mr. Naguib, your perseverance and devotion, as well as your belief in the project, made possible its realization. We Latin American representatives thank you so much for everything you have done to make this seminar become a reality. Historically, for more than 100 years, relations between Latin America and the Middle East were mostly marked by migration, mainly from countries like Lebanon and Syria, and later by the Palestinians. All Latin American countries benefited from this migration, but especially Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Colombia, Venezuela, and Paraguay. It is estimated that Middle Eastern descendants make up for almost 20 million of Latin American population today. This influx of Middle Eastern migrants brought with them skills and know-how, which became important ingredients for the development of a thriving entrepreneurial activity in the New World. Notwithstanding the strong migratory ties and the development of entrepreneurial activities by the Middle Eastern descendants in Latin America, very few economic, cultural, and political activities were able to grow between both regions for a long time. As recently as in the 60s, contacts were only limited to the joint participation in OPEC and the non-aligned movement. It is not until the 90s we start experiencing a world which all of a sudden becomes more integrated, partly because of the communication revolution, but also because of different ties, both commercial and investment ties, and the fact that Latin American countries have developed and modernized their external sector, which has promoted the Middle East and Latin America to converge economically and politically. Trade between both regions started to grow at an increasing rate at the end of the 90s, and important trade and cooperation agreements were signed during the 2000s. Moreover, some Latin American countries have also recently made important investments in the Middle Eastern region. Both regions have also established joint political regional organizations. This is the case of ASPA, for example, the South American Middle Eastern Summit, created in 2005 to discuss political, cultural, and economical matters. More important to point out, however, are the agreements signed between ASPA to liberalize trade between the countries being part of Mercosur and the Middle Eastern countries. There is no doubt that these agreements have had a positive effect in trade flow between the countries of both regions. For example, in 2009, exports from Latin America and the Caribbean to the Middle Eastern countries amounted to USD 15,611 million US dollars, a value 3 times higher than that achieved in 2001. The main Latin American exporters at that time have been Brazil, Argentina, Mexico, Chile, and Colombia, and these are the countries that have the highest exports still. On the other hand, in the 2009, Middle Eastern countries exported to Latin America and the Caribbean the amount of 6,435 million US dollars, but still it only represented that year less than 1% of total Latin American and Caribbean imports to Latin America. The growth of trade, specifically between Egypt and Latin America, has grown considerably during the past 15 years. The main contribution to this growth of trade from Latin America has been from Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Mexico. Trade with Brazil and Mexico has increased tenfold between 2014. Trade with Brazil and Mexico to the Middle East has increased tenfold to Egypt has increased tenfold between 2000 and 2014. And between Egypt and the Argentine, it has doubled only between 2009 and 2014, which is an incredible achievement. However, it has to be pointed out that whereas trade with Brazil and Argentina has tilted heavily in favor of these two countries, in the case of Mexico, the balance of trade has been quite even. This points to the fact that Egypt has many opportunities to be able to export to Latin American countries. Trade has to grow both ways in order to establish a sustainable growth for the future. In 2010, Egypt and the members of the Mercosur signed a commercial agreement which, without doubt, has established the basis for an increase in trade between Egypt and South American countries. We would also like to see commercial agreements being signed between Egypt and other economic blocs in the rest of Latin America and the Caribbean as well. Finally, I would like to point out that important Latin American direct investments, mainly from Brazil, Argentina, Chile, and Mexico, have taken place in Egypt. Chile has invested in oil drilling and extraction, Argentina in the production of pipelines for the oil industry, but more important, in nuclear cooperation, which has involved installation of a nuclear reactor plant for research. Mexico has invested in the extraction and distribution of cement, but also other investments in the service sector. Brazilian investors are also owners of a company for cement extraction and distribution, and are partly owner of a company which constructs and assembles buses. There are plans by some of these countries to further increase their investments in Egypt in the near future. Mr. Naguib, we are very confident that this seminar will strengthen our trade and investment relations in Egypt. I would like to finish by wishing you all the best in the deliberations and dialogues to take place here today. Thank you very much.
Well, good morning. Actually, I'm so honored to be here today with you. I think all of us, we will agree that Egypt just concluded a successful economic summit in Sharm el-Sheikh recently, and we are looking forward to the Arab Summit also as a comprehensive approach to different issues and challenges facing the Arab world. But I would like to thank Ashraf and everybody in the GTM that I think they were trying to draw the attention to the importance of the Latin American cooperation with Egypt. And we have a lot of venues and organizations could work seriously in order to enhance this kind of cooperation. I think all of us, we would recognize that most of the economic or the emerging economic countries, they are from Latin America, like Mexico, Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, and many other countries. So that's why I think we should pay more attention and try to enhance this cooperation with the Latin American countries. Not only on the economic side, but also on the cultural side and the political dialogue. That's why we have these conferences of the Arab Latin American summits every year. And also we have another venue called the Latin American Dialogue, which is an NGO headed by the Palestinian ambassador to Washington. And we had many sessions in Abu Dhabi and also in Cartagena and Colombia and in the the Republic of Dominican recently. So that's why we have a lot of efforts in order to enhance this cooperation and try to impose, or let us say, to increase the ties with the Latin American countries. I think the goal of this kind of conferences should be address the challenges and the problems which is facing the normal and the extension of the relationship between the Arab world and the Latin American countries. So I guess we will address these challenges today and trying also to find good solution to all these challenges and obstacles which is facing the increase of the relationship between the two sides. And I am sure that we can explore a lot of venues and possibilities to increase this kind of cooperation between the two sides. We have something in common. We have the cultural issues, we have the civilization issues, and I think all of this will pave the way for more cooperation and more relationship between the two sides in different spheres. Well, thank you very much for this opportunity to address this respectable audience, and I would like to thank Ashraf in his endeavor in order to give a real push or a real push to the economic cooperation with different countries, between Egypt and different countries, and I think he will be successful in his endeavor, and we will support him. We will support GTM for all this cooperation and all these efforts, and I'm sure that the media also will pay more attention to these activities, and I think it will serve more than different goals. Maybe in Arabic I would say مصر أنهت منذ أيام قليلة مؤتمر اقتصادي ناجح في شرم الشيخ، وأعتقد أن احنا بنتطلع أيضا إلى مؤتمر قمة ناجح أيضا في شرم الشيخ قريبا في نهاية هذا الشهر. مصر تنهج الآن استراتيجية شاملة بتحاول أنها تحل كل المشاكل وتضع خطوط استراتيجية جديدة لها، وأعتقد أن احنا في سبيلنا إلى النجاح في وضع اتفاق إطاري لمشكلة مياه النيل ومشكلة سد النهضة. احنا لسه في البداية، إذا كنا هنتكلم عن هذا الموضوع احنا في بداية الموضوع وليس في نهايته، عشان التوقعات تكون واقعية إلى حد ما. لسه أمامنا طريق طويل في التفاوض، لسه أمامنا مشوار، ولكن على الأقل احنا وضعنا الخط الاستراتيجي القائم على التعاون والمساواة في الحقوق والواجبات، وأعتقد أن ده كان نجاح كبير للدبلوماسية المصرية في موضوع حيوي يمس الأمن القومي المصري. الدول أمريكا اللاتينية دول هامة جدا بالنسبة للمنطقة العربية، في روابط ثقافية وفي هجرة كبيرة جدا تمت منذ سنوات طويلة من المنطقة العربية إلى هذه المنطقة أو أمريكا اللاتينية، وبالتالي يجب أن نبني على هذه الروابط، ويجب أن احنا نضع في اعتبارنا أن معظم الاقتصاديات البازغة في العالم هي في أمريكا اللاتينية. وأنا ضربت مثل بالمكسيك والبرازيل والأرجنتين وكولومبيا وفي غيرها من الدول كلها اقتصاديات بازغة، وبالتالي يجب أن احنا نولي أهمية للتعاون مع هذه الاقتصاديات. يمكن أنا يعني نسيت أقول في الكلمة بتاعتي أنه هذه المبادئ يجب أن تكون قائمة على فكرة التعاون ما بين الجنوب والجنوب. احنا دايما بنتطلع إلى التعاون مع دول الشمال أكثر من أن احنا نقيم تعاون مع دول الجنوب. دول الجنوب دول هامة جدا من الهند والصين وأيضا في أمريكا اللاتينية، وبالتالي ان احنا we should يعني address النوشن بتاعت South Dialogue. أنا أعتقد أن ده مبدأ مهم جدا في السياسة الخارجية المصرية، وفي منظمات كتيرة بترعى هذا المبدأ زي مجموعة ال15 اللي مصر عضو فيها، وأيضا مجموعة كبيرة من دول أمريكا اللاتينية عضو فيها، وبالتالي هناك فرص كبيرة لتعزيز التعاون بين مصر الدول العربية بوجه عام ودول أمريكا اللاتينية في أطر موجودة فعلا، ولكن تحتاج إلى أن احنا نهتم بها أكتر. شكرا جزيلا. شكرا.
أشكرك معالي السفير. Thank you very much. Always a pleasure to hear you, and thank you for your continuous support to all our efforts. I'm going to say something I don't think I ever thought I would say at one of these conferences. We're actually going to start our first panel earlier than expected. We're usually 10-15 minutes late. So actually, we're not only on time, we're even, we have an extra half an hour. So if you would allow me, Your Excellencies, we can start our panel. Perfect, excuse me.
Ashraf was pointing out, in recent times, probably not with great focus, there has not been necessarily the attention to look into what Latin America went throughout the 80s and 90s. The political and economic transitions that took place in Latin America are truly significant for the Arab world now. So this conference is also an opportunity to learn about that, to be able to learn about new developments in Latin America. As you have seen in some of the materials that we have prepared for this conference, yes, there is the countries of Mercosur, but there's also the countries that recently have established the Alliance for the Pacific. For countries, Colombia, Chile, Peru, and Mexico, who have decided to enter into a fast integration process in order to open up and liberalize the flow of people, of goods, of services, of capitals. So this is a conference that, in my view, gives the opportunity to each and everyone here today to learn, to look forward, and to also address some of the challenges. Let me mention just, relatively quickly, because I know that the whole concept of this conference is not to extend with long speeches, but on the contrary, to open the floor to address some of your specific questions and comments. Let me just point out in some of the topics, and of course I can only speak for my country. One challenge that might surprise you is that, yes, Mexico's heavy concentrated trade is with North America. 87% of our trade goes to the US and with Canada. But one can also see in the Middle East, and specifically in Egypt, that as an opportunity of companies who are already doing business with the US and Canada. But let me point out to some of the things that are still today a challenge. Our framework, the business of governments, is particularly the business of creating the legal framework that is needed for business to excel, to grow. And in the case of Mexico, our trade framework dates from 1963. That means the only agreement that Egypt and Mexico has on trade is from 1963. We have had in 1993, 30 years later, a review of that particular agreement, and some items in our trade exchanges has been revised. But that only points out to the urgent need to update our framework in order for business to develop. Mexico has 44 free trade agreements, but a free trade agreement is not going to come the day after tomorrow when our trade is narrowly reaching $100 million. So we need to look straight to the point to see in which ways can we make both governments, my government and the government of Egypt, to address that. And I have some good news to share with you. Soon there's going to be the first round of negotiations to get the double taxation agreement, which is really urgently needed, because Mexico has investments in Egypt, particularly one very important investment coming from a global company that is present here today, Cemex, the same way that Egypt has already started to increase their investments in Mexico. So it's about time that we have a double taxation agreement in place. But we also have to move fast to get another agreement which is very important, which is an agreement to protect and to promote on a reciprocal basis investments. Also, I'm sure that it will come up in our discussions and in our exchanges. We need more direct connectivity. We need better communications. So, again, governments are asked to do their part. And their part is to sit down and negotiate an air service agreement. Is there a possibility for Egypt Air and Aeromexico to work together? I am convinced that that's possible. That's my work. As the ambassador of Mexico, I'm here to promote all across the board the relations between two countries that are close, that are friends, and that have worked very strongly along these years. Now, I think that there's also important elements to consider. There are companies already doing business, and these companies are big, medium, and small. Some of them are here today, and I think that's the other virtue of this particular conference, that these companies, Cemex, Tenaris, Marmolin, and other companies can share with you what has been their experience in the case of Mexico and in the case of other countries. So there is the opportunity to touch base and to do what we normally do in this type of conference, which is to network, to learn from each other. So I would particularly pass on to you this very simple message. This is an opportunity to start engaging and learning from each other, to address specific issues. Mexico has not managed to export 1 kilo of meat because we still don't have a halal certificate. We're still working on that. We have a task force in the Ministry of Trade and Industry in Mexico addressing that, to be able to join and compete with our friends from Mercosur. Brazil, Uruguay, Paraguay are already, Argentina of course, are already exporting beef and in substantive quantities and doing very good business. If we want to move forward, we need to take those practical steps. So governments have to do their part, but there's also the very key dynamic role of the private sector. I couldn't be more pleased to be here in Smart Village. This is how I see the future of Egypt. This is from where I see the enlightening and the enormous potential that exists in this great country. Here is where we can capture the momentum that we have underlined that has come. It's only 10 days that a number of us were attending the conference in Sharm el-Sheikh. Let's build on that momentum. Let's work together for the future of Egypt, for the future or more substantive, more productive, more rewarding relations between each and every one of our countries with Egypt. So I believe that we have to take practical steps. I'm particularly pleased to see that today Alia Hamdi Abulnaga is here today from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because in about 3 weeks' time there's going to be a meeting in Mexico City, which is our mechanism for bilateral and multilateral consultations, which is going to take place. Wonderful. This is the opportunity to look into the agenda and to move forward. But I couldn't agree more with what the ambassador was pointing out. We already have a number of fora. We have the case of the South American countries. You have already in place the summit of the South American Arab countries. There's ASPA. There's the dialogues that are taking place. There's a number of associations. There's a number of already institutions which are working, which I am guessing that a number of you would not necessarily have had the chance to get to know. Probably many of you haven't realized, because there hasn't been the chance, that there's a Mexican Arab Chamber of Commerce, like it is an Arab Brazilian Chamber of Commerce. That these are active chambers, that these are chambers which are already in place, that can provide the services, that can certify, that can do all of that for you as businessmen who are interested in opening up and looking beyond. Also, as I mentioned, there's already business taking place between companies working with other countries. It won't come as a surprise to you to know that Mexico's trade in the Arab world has two big trade partners. Our two big trade partners are Saudi Arabia and Algeria. I am convinced that there's opportunities for Egyptian businessmen and businesswomen and businesses and enterprises to work together hand in hand with your Saudi friends and with your Algerian friends to work out together with Mexico. So, exchanging information, finding out much more. How can we learn more from each other?
In the region as well. I would like to actually point out to two different things about Guatemala, and that's about our exports opportunities and about our investment opportunities. And I just want to name something about investments that one always thinks of investments as being infrastructural investments, investments in mining or investments in oil and so on, like Egypt is trying to get now, for example, and like Guatemala is trying to get from the outer world now. But Egypt can also invest in Guatemala, as Guatemala can also invest in Egypt, because there are other parts, and I will come back to that later to explain what it is, that where investments can take place in the region as well, Egyptian investments here. First of all, I would like to say that Guatemala is well known after you explain where Guatemala is. People say, oh, yes, of course, there is Guatemalan coffee. You go to Starbucks and you can buy Guatemalan coffee, you know. But it's imports that come to Egypt, not directly to Egypt. They come through third countries. Starbucks is the number one buyer of Guatemalan coffee actually right now. You have also other like flower cuttings and so on that come from Amsterdam, not from Guatemala directly. So our exports are to Amsterdam, not to Egypt, for example. So there is a lot of things you have to take in consideration when it comes to trade, that now a lot of trade is still being taken care of by big traders. Another example is when we export to Egypt, and it really shows that it comes from Guatemala, which is sugar. We're the 6th largest exporter of sugar in the world, or the 7th largest. I mean, it changes from year to year. And when there is a lack of sugar in Egypt, the big traders like EFD and MAN and Cargill and so on, they know that there is a lack of sugar in Egypt, so they take the sugar, and then we know that it's Guatemalan sugar, or the importers here know that it's Guatemalan sugar. And as a matter of fact, the trade that has taken place between Guatemala and Egypt has always been in Guatemala's favor because of the sugar only. But nothing else, really. I mean, very, very few items from Egypt and very few other items from Guatemala. In the 1980s, in the mid-1980s, Guatemala was known for exporting only coffee, bananas, sugar, cardamom, meat.